families, creating a lifetime of memories. Sadly, some families are denied these important moments due to the sad practice of alienation. These are families divided.
Divorce and co-parenting are a major life interruption for families, especially the kids, but also for parents and grandparents. And it's even worse in blame-filled, high-conflict cases. When parents engage in alienation by turning the kids against the other parent or grandparents, kids suffer. They're denied the opportunity to build the 4 big skills necessary for future resilience. New Ways for Families online class can help. Parents learn to use our popular BIF and EAR skills to calm the conflict and stop the hostile emails and texts. And we even have a class for kids and parents to learn together. Research shows a 75% improvement in joint parental decision-making after this course is taken, plus overall improvements for kids' well-being. Don't wait to make this affordable investment in your children's future and improve your well-being too. Start learning new ways for your family today at conflictplaybook.com.
Hi, this is a brief intro to the talk that I'm going to be giving for the 2023 conference. The topic is the cult of one, how a troubled daughter-in-law can create family estrangements. And I'm focused on the daughter-in-law because men are in many ways very vulnerable to being manipulated by their wives, either around their masculinity, around their needs to feel separate, the fact that men often have only, their wives are often only their best friend, if not their only friend. Men typically don't have as strong a sense of obligation to parents as do women. So for many men, if their wives are really motivated to alienate the parents in one way or another, many, if not most men, are really very vulnerable to it. So if the wife were to say, well, we're your family now, or you need to protect my well-being, or your parents are toxic, or they're hurtful to me, or you don't realize how terrible your childhood was, there are many men who may be successful and strong in almost every other aspect of their life who would give in. And if the wife says choose them or choose me, they end up choosing their wife. So it's a very complicated but sadly common scenario. And also because the parents are the gatekeepers to the grandchildren, then often loving, dedicated grandparents are also cut out of their lives, which is terrible for the grandparents and terrible for the grandchildren. So in my talk, I'm going to talk about why this is common and the common mistakes that parents make when they're faced with this issue and the best strategies for going forward. Hope you can make it.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to this episode of Families Divided TV. I'm Elaine Cobb. I'm founder and president of Family Access Fighting for Children's Rights. I'm also your host and executive producer of Families Divided TV. On this episode of our Families Divided TV, we're joined by Elaine Simmonds. She is an estranged parent as well as an alienated grandparent. And I'm really happy that she's here with us in this episode. Hello, Elaine, and thank you for being with us.
Hi, Elaine. Thank you for inviting me. I'm glad to participate.
It's quite different having 2 Elaines on this segment, but that's pretty good. Yeah, I'm glad you're with us. Okay, I want to start out with asking you, how do you believe alienation has changed your personality?
Oh, gosh. Well, estrangement and alienation was something I really didn't know much about until it happened to me. I'm sure I would have done things differently in the early days if I'd known then what I know now. My confidence and self-esteem hit an all-time low. I was totally devastated. I was hurt. I was angry. Based on the many stories I've read over the years, the experiences of alienated parents are all very similar to mine. When your child stops speaking with you and cuts off contact with your grandchildren, we are overcome by a strong sense of desperation and the need to fix whatever is wrong. We start looking for answers. We read everything we can find. Even though many of us don't know what we did, we apologize. We are embarrassed and humiliated when our apologies are completely dismissed by our child. We experience unexpected bouts of crying. We live in sort of a foggy confusion, questioning our own sanity and self-worth. We go through cycles of grief, including shock, denial, anger, and severe depression. Acceptance is really difficult for us. We hold on to the glimmer of hope that our child will return. Early on, it never occurs to us that this will be our new normal. We're in disbelief this is happening to us at all. We can't imagine why our child has become so cruel and so uncaring of our feelings. I was never one to let things fester and go unresolved. I always tried to take care of things right away. Don't go to bed angry. I found my son's lack of willingness to work things out and the years of silence that followed to be very, very frustrating. In the beginning, I spent hours racking my brain, trying to figure out what I could have done to cause this. I wondered if perhaps I had some kind of an undiagnosed mental condition, such as multiple personalities, where I was doing things that I was unaware of. I went over and over things in my mind, robbing myself of the ability to sleep. I went through stages of grief over and over again. I finally broke free of the brain fog, and I had a clearer vision of our situation. I concluded that there was nothing wrong with me. My reaction to this sudden change in our family was completely normal. My world had just fallen apart, and I had no idea how to fix it. I was devastated. I had always put the needs of others ahead of my own. I had done that for my son and for his family for years. I'm the mom. That's what moms do. I had always hoped that my family would be there for me, as I had always been there for them. I have since let go of my expectations of others, and I focus on the things that I can control. I'm definitely more guarded with my words. I learned that people judge you based on their own perceptions. Closed-minded people hear what they want to hear. Your words can be twisted and misinterpreted, so sometimes the less you say, the better off you are. I did try to talk to my son early on, but I could never make any sense of what he was saying. What he complained about or what his wife was unhappy with, I just couldn't understand why those things were an issue. I was being a normal parent and a normal grandparent, doing what normal parents and normal grandparents do.
Well, what steps are you taking now to heal? Because I know it's a process. It's a long process and probably a never-ending process. So what are you doing now to help yourself in healing?
Well, it's been 11 years, so it has been a process that started a long time ago. And I started out by reading articles and books, trying to understand what was going on in my family. The first book I read focused on gratitude. So I started putting gratitude at the front of my thinking. I focused my daily thoughts on my blessings and not on my pain. Some days are definitely more difficult than others. You may have to look a little bit harder, but there is always something to be thankful for. I stopped blaming myself for our broken family. I have no control over the perceptions or the behaviors of another adult. I didn't choose this path, and I can't fix a situation that I don't control. I look to the future, and I've let go of the past. The past can't be changed. The past can only be forgiven. I know that I did my best with the information that I had at the time. I focus my attention on those who love me and who want me to be part of their lives. Over the years, I have been both a member and an administrator of several support groups. I've spent countless hours supporting other parents, listening to their stories, and trying to ease their pain. I have never received any compensation whatsoever for my time supporting others or sharing my story. For me, this is a labor of love, and I have put countless hours into working with others and trying to make them feel better about themselves so that they can live a happy life. Helping others heal has helped me heal. If you encourage others often enough, eventually you begin to follow your own best advice. There's a YouTube video where Dr. Joshua Coleman is addressing AGA, Alienated Grandparents Anonymous. In the video, he states that parents who have done the most for their children are the most at risk for estrangement. I thought, wow, that doesn't make sense to me. But I can certainly relate to this statement. We were very good to our son and his family. The common reaction of people when they hear that you have an estranged child or alienated grandchildren, the question, what did you do to cause this, is very hurtful. Because in many cases, we haven't done anything to justify this. 11 years of your child not speaking to you or not allowing you to see your grandchildren is certainly excessive. I can understand a period of cooling off when there is a difference of opinion, but 11 years, that is just totally uncalled for. We're human. We all make mistakes. We all have the responsibility to forgive others as God forgives us. Finally, frustrated and weary, I turned it over to God. You have to do what you have to do to let go and move on. You can't stay stuck in your grief forever. I have a friend who told me once that we often turn things over to God. Then we take it back. Then we give it back to God again. We repeat the process several times before we finally leave it in God's hands and leave it alone. We stop trying to fix it and let Him handle it. I don't think we ever fully heal. We just learn to live with our pain. We push it down deep inside so it doesn't interfere with our ability to be happy. I try to live my life as happy as I possibly can. That's all I can do.
I understand. I was thinking of when you were saying those things of how Rose Kennedy, all the things she had gone through, she spoke of trying to heal, and basically you never really heal totally. There's just plenty of scars there to cover up the hurt, and the anguish. But I think it's great that you're involved with so many support groups, because not only are you helping yourself, but you're helping many, many others. And as we do with Family Access Fighting for Children's Rights and Families Divided TV, it's a labor of love. It's a ministry, pretty much like what you're doing, Elaine. And that's very important, that you can reach out to others and help them. And I think God really truly will bless you for doing all of that. And what you mentioned earlier also about giving it to God and then taking it back. I think most of us do that very same thing. Some don't even want to give it to God. And, I hope that one day they'll realize that's how important that is, to be able to lay it at God's feet and let Him try to control and help the situation, because He is the one that helps us with miracles. He's the only person that can perform miracles. And that's what it would be in a situation like this. And as you're saying that, what is the title of that book about gratitude that you mentioned earlier too? What is the title of that? Do you happen to know that one?
Yes, the title of the book is Healing from Family Rifts, RIFTS, by Mark Seichel. And I think that was the second book I ever read. The first book I read is no longer in print. And so I wouldn't recommend that to anyone because you can't find it. But this book was the second one I read. And I think the idea of gratitude really saved me because I focused my thinking on other people in my family that would do things. I would think of cute little things that my dog did, or sweet things my husband did for me, or the sweet things my other son had done for me. And, so if you start focusing every day and looking around and saying, this is a beautiful day. I am so fortunate. I have my health. I have, what family I have. And, I'm just lucky and, or not lucky, I guess, just, blessed is a better word for it. So, gratitude really helped. I think it's probably one of the most important aspects of your healing, especially in the early days. I always had the mantra of fake it until you make it. And I did a lot of that, I think, in the early days with the people in my support group. You can tell them, it's easy to tell people, but sometimes it's hard to even do what you tell people they need to do, although intellectually, what has to be done. But in your heart, it's really hard. When you tell people you have to let go and move on, it's really hard to do.
Absolutely. Yeah, I know personally, for me, it's the same way, same situation. And I'm sure it is for most others as well. But I do think, sometimes, and people have said, God may have put me in this place to help others. And that perhaps is what he's done for you as well. It's not an easy thing to swallow some days. I know you long to see your son and your grandchildren. And I know that is difficult, but I'm glad that you are allowing God to use you where you're planted at this time. So that's really good. And I appreciate the work that you do for alienation and estrangement. I truly do. Another question I have is, what things have you personally tried to do to reach out to your grandchildren? Because we are focusing a lot on being an alienated grandparent here in this episode. So what are some of the things that you have personally tried to do to reach out to your grandchildren?
Well, that's really a difficult situation because my grandchildren are minors, and reaching out to them, I don't think that anything I sent to them would actually end up in their hands. And if you persist on reaching out to your grandchildren, you could open yourself up to some very angry parents. And you don't want to anger your child any more than they already are, because then it only makes it harder on the children, because they're more likely to keep them away from you, and it interferes with your healing. My grandchildren now are 12 and 14. So they're still minors, even though they're really old enough to make their own choices. They're still minors and under the control of my son and his wife. My son has moved twice in the last 11 years, and we have never been given their address. So the only way to contact them is if I go and find them. And that's not the message that I want to send. So for 11 years, we've basically walked on eggshells, and we've respected the boundaries that our son and his wife have set in place. We leave them alone, we don't interfere, and we just pray that one day things will change. We have reached out to our son, but he doesn't respond. Over the years, we've purchased savings bonds for the grandchildren. We purchased them in our name because obviously we can't purchase them in theirs. We put gift certificates for the bonds and greeting cards, and we put the greeting cards in a safe place. I have picture albums with notes. I journal, and I leave notes. I find funny little memes and, different things like that I want the children to have. I've bought them little gifts as when we travel, and I just store them. I keep them kind of in, you say a memory box, but I guess it's a memory drawer because there's too much stuff to go into a small box. The picture albums have memes and little notes. And at some point, our grandchildren will become curious about us. And we pray that they seek us out and give us a chance to assure them that we never stopped loving them and we never stopped wanting to see them. They have a right to have a relationship with all of their family members. There's excellent videos on Families Divided YouTube channel that address the negative effects that alienation has on the children. I want our grandchildren to know that we never rejected them, regardless of what they may have been led to believe. I don't ever want them to blame themselves for this situation or to view themselves as unlovable by their grandparents.
Totally. And something I think too, the alienator of whichever parent it is or both parents is probably believing in their minds that you're going to try to turn their grandchildren away from them and badmouth or put down, gaslight, whatever, them to the grandchildren. And what is important is we don't make that mistake and do that, because that's only going to make it harder on the grandchildren, because then they're going to feel like they've got to make a decision between the two, and they don't need to have to do that. They should be able to have both. And I think that's very important that these alienator parents see that and understand that you're not trying to destroy their relationship with the children. You're only trying to build on the family unit. And that's what's important here. Do you agree with that, Elaine?
Absolutely. I do not want my grandchildren to grow up to be the kind of person that would have the mindset that would do this to anyone. It's very, very cruel and very hurtful. I don't want them to be that kind of person. I would be much more likely to encourage them to continue to have a relationship with their parents and to work out any issues. I just want to be part of the family. And I would absolutely never, ever encourage my grandchildren to do this, to estrange or alienate their own parents. That's just not, that's just not my personality. I would not want that to happen. I love my grandchildren. I want them to grow up to be healthy and well-adjusted people. I don't want them to be mean. It's just not right.
Yeah, because and that's the best attitude to have, because in doing that, you're teaching the children to do that in their lives as they, are adults, to be alienating people and things. And that's not a healthy relationship at all. And it's not a healthy person that's doing that. So I encourage also other grandparents who are watching this episode that you don't want to do that as well. It's we've been told by the professionals and the experts that that's very damaging, to the child, to the grandchildren. And that's the last thing we want to do, is damage them any more than they've already, are dealing with now, because they're scarred from this. They totally are. They're missing part of their heritage, a big part of their heritage. I know in our situation, our granddaughter Dare is alienated from her whole paternal side of her family, and she's missing out on all of that. And she's almost 12, and it's not fair to any child to have to be going through that. So when the day comes that we will see our grandchildren or hear from them, and I truly know that's going to happen, I really, really know that, then we don't want them to turn into the possibility of being an alienator themselves with that transgeneration type mode. So you agree with that, Elaine?
Oh, yes, absolutely.
Right. As we are all Christian, as we're Christians here, what are your biblical thoughts on not being able to teach your grandchildren about God? In fact, God did instruct us to do so in his word.
Well, I have a little story in that respect as well. Early on, a therapist told us that our son has a right to make his own decisions, whether we agree with them or not. My rights and the rights of my grandchildren were completely discounted. Obviously, we did not continue talking to this therapist. He just was not a fit for our family and our values. This therapist was approaching the choice of our son from a legal standpoint. I was viewing this as a moral issue. Of course, our son has a legal right to make his own choices, but God does have expectations as to how we treat others. Too many people leave God out of the equation when they make their choices, and that's unfortunate. God gave us a set of 10 rules to follow, but too many people view them as optional or simply irrelevant. Prior to alienation, my husband and I were invited to the grandchildren's baptisms, which were held nearly 2 years apart. We stood at the front of the church as sponsors with our son and his family as each baby was baptized. During the ceremony, we promised to nurture the children in Christ's holy church by teaching and by example. Sadly, we are being prevented from fulfilling the promises we made to God on that day. That is out of our control. This is a decision that our son has made to deny us that privilege. Our son is not setting a good Christian example himself. For his young children at all. He's refusing to honor his parents as God has commanded him to do. As parents, we can set our child's feet on the road to salvation, but we have no control over the path they ultimately follow.
Yeah, that's so true. I know, the children need to understand God, and I know in the world today it's very difficult with everything going on if they do not have a base of faith and knowledge of God in Christ, and you being hindered from that, you and your husband Glen, is absolutely unfortunate and sad for the children as well as y'all too. It is important that the children understand God, and the Bible speaks strongly of grandparents and their role as grandparents. We have some of that listed on our website too about grandparents' roles as in their grandchildren's lives. So yeah, it's very important as Christians. I know my son Brian was raised in a Christian home and a strong Christian base, and I know there's mom Kate does not have a belief in God. So that is a hindrance there. And we just pray that one day all these children out there will have an opportunity to have a decision-making time in their lives of their walk with God. So that is hugely important. So let me ask you, you've been on Families Divided before, and we received great response when you and Jeff did your segment on grandparents, and you and Jeff and Philip did a segment on alienated parents. I personally realize how difficult it is to share your story. Tell me, why did you really want to share this today? And before you answer, I want everyone to understand it's very difficult to come up front with this. I personally don't share my story totally with any of this going on, but Elaine has volunteered to do so today, and I feel that she's brought it across in a very professional manner, as well as a strong Christian manner, as a grandparent and as a mother. So Elaine, in your own words, why did you want to do this?
Well, first, let me say I really appreciate everyone listening to the stories that we're sharing here on this YouTube channel. on Families Divided. And I also appreciate you, Elaine, for providing the opportunity for others to speak out and to bring attention to this unfortunate situation. There are people out there who feel very much alone. They think they are the only ones in this situation. They don't realize that there are many of us who live every day with the pain of alienation. If my words bring comfort to just one person, then I've made a difference that could save a life. Suicide is a big concern, especially with older individuals who experience alienation and have lost their will to live. Alienation is so unfair to the grandchildren who are caught in the middle of a conflict between their parents and their grandparents. We had a loving relationship with our grandchildren for 2 years and 4 years, respectively. Imagine their confusion when we suddenly disappeared from their lives. We wonder what they were told. Why can't we see Grandma and Grandpa? What are they told about us now? What kind of story are they living with? It surely can't be the truth. Children shouldn't be used as weapons to hurt the grandparents, because it's, in the end, the children are hurt just as much as the grandparent. They're missing out on a relationship with people who should be loved and cherished members of their extended family. They can never get those lost years back. Children are more intuitive than we give them credit for. They know that something isn't right in their family when they see their friends enjoying time with grandparents, and they don't have that opportunity. Estrangement and alienation has been known to repeat in subsequent generations. My children were never alienated from anyone, but there is a history of alienation in both mine and my husband's families. Bringing awareness to alienation may help to break the cycle for future generations. Alienation is not a good legacy for any family to carry forward into the next generation. Putting a face to our story helps people better understand who we are. Being alienated doesn't mean that you were a bad parent. We are normal, loving parents and normal, loving grandparents who are just getting a pretty bad deal. Speaking out, it isn't easy, but sometimes we have to step out of our comfort zone and do what needs to be done. My son has the power to change the narrative of our story at any time. We have made it abundantly clear that our door is always open. I would love to come here and tell the audience how my prodigal son returned and how we have rejoiced in our family's healing. I hope that one day I can do just that.
I totally agree with that. I know a lot of, even some experts have said that the longer they're away, the more difficult it is for them ever coming back. And I don't really agree with that totally, because in the 12 years that I've been working in this field of alienation and with Families Access fighting for children's rights, you know, I've had success stories come to me where parents reunified with their adult alienated child after 20 years. One was 27 years. So I think God is in the miracle business, as I said earlier, and I don't think we should ever give up on that. Now, I wonder if your relationship would ever be the same again with your adult child. Maybe not. I don't know that that could possibly be, but the main thing too that I want to bring out in what you've spoken with today, Elaine, is the fact that these grandchildren and children of parents, they're scarred for the rest of their lives. This is not something they ever get over. And I really hope and pray that as a parent of these children and grandchildren, you realize that your child is being used as a pawn or a piece of property, which they're neither. They're human beings, just like all the rest of us. And they have God-given rights, just like all of us do. And they're being deprived of those rights. So I hope and pray that one day, many of these parents who are keeping these children from their loved ones realize they're doing this in spite and hate or whatever else is going on in themselves, but they're not thinking of what's best for the child. And many times we get people saying, oh, well, I get emails or texts or people commenting on our pages or our Families Divided TV YouTube channel, and they're like, I'm doing what's best for my child. Well, in some circumstances, possibly. In most, no, I don't think so. I think that really you're doing it because this is what you've got going on in your mind and heart, and you think that's the way it is. But unless that child has been physically, emotionally, mentally abused, unless the grandparent is a sex trafficker or a person who's a murderer, who's done something horrible in their lives, there's no reason to keep those grandchildren from their grandparents. Even if it was supervised visitation, they should be able to have at least that. So I hope and pray that one day some of you parents out there will realize, or grandparents possibly who are keeping them, who have custody of grandchildren who are keeping them from the other grandparents. There are a few cases of those that you do realize what you're doing is absolutely wrong for that child. And I know we're probably going to get feedback on this, and that's okay. That's okay. We're praying that God will change minds and hearts through what's been said today. I really appreciate you, Elaine, for being with us today. I know how difficult it is to speak out. And in this year of Families Divided TV, we're going to probably be touching more hearts in different ways. We're going to probably make some mad because we're going to be pushing some buttons that we haven't pushed before, but need to be. And this is something we've prayed about, and I think we need to be more bold in our statements for people to realize what's going on. And for Elaine to come with us today and share her story, it's really, it takes a lot of courage. But again, she has a burden not only for her grandchildren and her son, but also for others. So we're hoping that this episode of Families Divided TV speaks to many hearts. Don't go at it with a defensive mode. Look at it like, what actually am I doing that's really right for my child or my grandchild? Am I doing it for me, or am I doing it for them? Is it possible that these grandparents really aren't going to do anything that's going to hurt the children, but keeping them from that grandparent is hurting them and scarring them? And are you teaching your child, like Elaine said earlier, are you teaching them to be an alienator themselves? Is that what's happening here? Because for real, God forbid, that's the last thing you want to be done, because we would hate for them one day to even turn on their own parents, as a lot of the parents have that are keeping them from their grandchildren. Truly, we don't want that to happen. So we really want to thank you all for being with us on this episode of Families Divided TV. I truly thank Elaine Simmonds for being with us. It's been a privilege. I do know Elaine's walk personally, what she's been through. She's dealt with this 11, I'm in 12th, and it is a hard road. But I just thank God that we do have him to lean on. And I hope many of you will also do that as well. If you aren't already trusting him, I pray that you will, because he's the only answer to get you through this. He's the only strength that you can have that will never leave you nor forsake you. So in saying those things, Elaine, do you have anything else you'd like to add before we leave?
Yeah, the one thing I would like to add is that I think a big problem with adult children who choose to estrange, they don't ever give you another chance. They don't wait a year or two and say, okay, this has gone on long enough. We need to straighten it out. In this period of time that they're gone, you do a lot of soul searching and you think, well, maybe I could do things different. Things have changed a lot from when my children were little, and my mom and my husband's parents. My father had passed away when I was in my teens, but I did have my mom and my husband's parents, and the liberties we allowed to them seemed to be a thing of the past. That when you think you're being a normal grandparent, and then you find out that You've crossed boundaries all over the place that you didn't even know existed. And they don't give you the opportunity to learn and make corrections and then try again. They cut you off and you're gone. And, like for myself, it's been almost 11 years. Why? I don't deserve another opportunity. Like you mentioned, criminals. I mean, there's criminals that get less of a sentence than I've gotten. For what? Giving an Easter basket without permission? I mean, really, who does that? That makes no sense. But I do appreciate being invited, Elaine, and I'm glad to participate. And I think your program and the work that you've done over the years is wonderful and has been a great benefit to those of us who are living with estrangement and alienation. And I really appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Elaine. And we're praying for you and your family and for many others. And I do agree as well. Through this alienation, thank God we've had resources where we could study and learn and see what we can do to make a better relationship with our children and also our grandchildren. So let's just hope and pray for all those out there. And I do hope those that are watching will look at all of the other videos that we have listed on our Families Divided TV. Subscribe to our YouTube channel. That will help you because we send out new information and new videos on a regular basis. So saying all these things, I'm going to wish you a good time with your life now, because you do need to be happy, you need to be healthy, and you need to take care of yourself. Even though you may be alienated or estranged from your loved ones, take care of you. That's very important, for the day will come when you may have that opportunity to be with that family member again. So God bless, and thanks much for watching.
On our next episode of Families Divided TV, Dr. Susan Heitler shares 6 sentence starters for success in difficult situations.